Theresa, most people know you here. They know of you as Theresa Olphert, holistic wellness. You're a holistic
Mhm.
wellness practitioner. Give us a brief outline of what you're doing now, and then introduce to us what you had been doing all along beforehand.
All in. So now at the moment I'm still working. Every week I go down to the Multiple Sclerosis Centre and I give complementary therapies down there. So it's either Indian head massages, reflexology, I give Reiki, and I also give Rahani as well, which the other day gave Rahani to somebody and she was like, "Oh my God, I've never felt like that ever before." She was just so relaxed. And so Rahani will be that you work with the archangels. I
Yeah.
also do, because a lot of the clients down there would have swollen feet because they're not moving. So I do reflexology, lymph drainage as well, which I would have learned. Oh gosh, it's coming up for 2 years now. And it really does. They would say, when I do it, they feel their feet aren't as tight, and definitely if they're in for 2 weeks and I meet them again, they'll say to me, "Oh my goodness, Teresa, I peed for Ireland last night." So it does get rid of a lot of fluid for them, and they absolutely love it. So that's what I do, and I do a little bit at home. I don't do a huge amount at home, but I do it at home, and I just love giving it. Absolutely love giving it. I I'm going to say probably I love it more at home because it's my own space, and I have it lovely. Whereas I go into the rooms of the clients in the multiple sclerosis centre, and so there is no lights or candles and things like that, but still they don't seem to notice. I put on the lovely music and they're just happy that I'm there chatting and or letting them in their silence,
Yeah.
whichever they want. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And I've been doing that for over 4 years. I retired from nursing 4 years ago and I had done 45 years of nursing. So
45. I didn't realize
yeah.
that. That's some experience and life
Mm,
in that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I started when I was 17. So, you did back then. So I was very young, learning a lot. There was a lot. I was very, I suppose, sheltered. When I say sheltered, we in the family didn't have mental health illness. I
Yeah.
think the only person I knew that had died was my grandmother, who lived up the north of Ireland. My others were all dead. So
Yes.
I never got to know any of that
Right.
death and dying things. For me at the time, I remember my grandmother dying, mommy and daddy going away for that funeral, and we had cousins minding us. And they were making us curries and allowing us to have sips of wine. So for me, the the whole death thing was great because I could do this. We had a great time. So it wasn't, I didn't feel that pain at the time. But
Yeah.
after that, obviously, once I started nursing, the reality hit home. I suppose I was subjected really to a lot of stuff that I had never been growing up. And it was, I suppose, sometimes traumatic. But
Yeah.
also, even as a 17 and 18-year-old, when somebody would die, there was a beautiful ritual. I trained in St. Michael's in Dunleary. There was a beautiful ritual where the nuns taught us to sit beforehand with people who were dying, and that when they died, there was a lovely ritual of giving them the hour for the family and opening the windows to let the spirits out. There was all this and being very
Yes.
reverent around them. We were taught all that, so it became a beautiful, for me, a beautiful experience. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, when my own father died, it was traumatic, but the ritual around that for me was still a lovely experience because at that stage I was 13, 14 years nursing. But that ritual and that beautiful experience that I gave to others, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
came back for me when Daddy was dying and when he died because I could see it as that place and that so I can't say that probably my youngest sister did, but for me it was so. And I always had this thing when I was nursing to do unto others as I would have for
Yeah.
me and my family.
Yeah.
So if something was horrendous for them or whatever, I would always try to look after somebody the way that I would want people to look, especially the way I would want people to look after my mum and dad, my sisters
Mm,
and brother.
mm.
So that was always in my head.
And is that
So
what brought you to hospice care and palliative care?
probably like
Yeah.
I'd worked well over 20, let me see, 25 years, 24 years in general nursing as such. And then I did bed management for 3 years, which was the worst job in my whole life. And it was then I know this sounds mad, but I was at a graduation for students and when they were qualifying. And I sat and the one of the speakers said her thing was always remember why you started nursing,
Mm.
if times are bad. And I sat there and I thought, I didn't start nursing to be doing being a bed manager. I started nursing because I wanted to look after people. I wanted to look after them when they were
Yes.
well, when they were dying. I wanted to look after their families. This is not why I did this. And
Yeah.
within 2 months, I had applied to the hospice
Really?
and went, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And you're not going to believe this, but this is part of what we were saying. We would talk about. You'll have to get used to the fact that I do ramble a bit.
Oh, please
But
do.
so I had applied for a job to the hospice, and I had was waiting for to hear back from them. And this is true to God. My mother's birthday was on the 13th of January, and the 13th of January that year, that was 2004, I had the worst day in bed management ever. It was just horrendous. And at the end of it, I thought, oh no, I hadn't applied for the job at the time. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. I definitely have to go. And so I saw the ad and I applied. And my father's, and in between then, the things were settled and it was all right. And I thought, I don't know, it's not that bad, really. And then the 4th of February was my father's birthday date. Now, both were dead. And it was the second worst day in bed management that I ever had. And I sat that night and I said, okay, I hear you both. I hear you. I shouldn't be in this anymore. I need to move. And this job had come up, staff nurse. And I was, a nurse administration. So I was in a lot of money at the time. But that's all I kept saying that evening. Okay, so mommy, I didn't listen to you. So you got daddy to tell me, and off that letter went. And I started in the hospice in the May. And in between, the days weren't so bad after that, but I had set it in motion. And when I was leaving, the CEO of the hospital, when I was leaving, he said, I know you've been fabulous at this job, Theresa,
Yeah.
that you're doing, but I know you're going to be happier where you go.
Brilliant.
He said, that's who you are. And
And
it
were
was.
you? Is that how it was for you?
Uh-huh.
Overall, yes.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was so much happier. I was doing what I really wanted to do. I was looking after people who at that stage were dying because I was in the hospice itself and their families, because in the hospice, we looked after everybody. So in a
Yes.
hospital, you don't have the time. You're like, oh, so you've got 5 children and this is your wife, Mary. That's great and blah, blah, blah. But then in the hospice, it was like, oh, you have 5 children. So what are all your names and who comes first and who's the baby and who's this and what are you all doing? And you got to know everybody. You got to know all about them. That's what it was about. It
Mm.
was the whole family as a whole, not
Mhm.
just Johnny who wasn't well. I'm
Patient.
saying Johnny because that was
Yeah.
my dad. Johnny who
Yeah.
wasn't well, or who was dying. You knew the whole family
Mm.
because they were in, maybe some of them were in for a couple of days, some were there for a couple of weeks, and but you would be supporting the whole lot of them
Mm.
every day.
And there's
And
an
it was
immense
a
amount of
beautiful job.
trust put into your hands, really, when you think about it. That must have
Yeah.
seemed quite daunting in the beginning, did it?
I think I was born to
Yeah.
the nursing. So by the time I started working that, I was let me see, I was 44.
Right.
So I was all that nursing, all that experience, dealing with people who were dying in the hospital because I worked in cardiac. I'd done midwifery, so some of the mums had lost their babies. So all along my nursing career, there was always death and dying, as well as getting well and going home and being well. Do you know what I mean? But I
Yes.
knew that other side. So going into the hospice then was just, I suppose it was like I'd started nursing, I'd done my midwifery, so I'd been part of lives being started. And this
Yeah.
was, in a way, it was coming to the end of my career, but it was also the like just an end of life thing.
Mm.
That that's the way I was. That's where I was working at that time,
Yeah.
and I have to say it was. I adored it. I
Well, can
adored
I
it.
ask you something, Theresa? And this is from
Yeah.
someone on the outside. That what so what would have been the transitions that you've got somebody coming in, it's all very new to them.
Mm,
I suppose before someone comes to hospice, they have learned that this is
yeah.
terminal, it's end of life. So you experience the incoming of a family, of a loved one, and right
Mm,
through to the end when you see them through that story,
mm.
and you are there at the end of life. What for you is that kind of transition? What are the differences, between someone who's just beginning to meet with you and someone who is leaving you, family who take their parting from you at the end of that experience?
Yeah, and I suppose too, I have to say that after 7, 8 years of working in the hospice itself, I then worked in the community with St.
Yes.
Francis. So from that, it was so. I'm going to say we would get the referrals and we would go meet people for the first time.
Yeah.
So some of them hadn't been told that we were palliative, which was very awkward
Mm.
because we would have said, I'm the palliative. You'd go in and say, hi, I'm Theresa, I'm a palliative care nurse. And they're like, what? You know, and that was very distressing for them and us. But we would get around it by saying, look, they've asked us to come in look after your symptoms, blah, blah. And you'd get to know them at that stage. And right from the start, even down to families, and I was thinking about this earlier, a lot of families would say, don't say you're from the hospice. Tell them that you're just a nurse from the hospital. And we would have to say when we met them first, we can't do that. That's a lie.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not starting a thing of trust.
Mhm.
Now, what we would say is, I won't mention it, but if they ask, I have to say, I have to tell the truth, because not to is to break a trust that I've probably built up with somebody. But a lot of people, when we came out, they knew there was nurses coming from the hospital. And down the line, they would ask, where are you really from? You know,
Yeah.
and I would always say, oh, where do you think I'm from? Just because to hear what they would say. So the
Yes.
transition, back to the transition, I suppose, because I do ramble. So when you do it from that stage, we've built up that rapport, that relationship with the patient, with their family, with their loved ones. And by the time a lot of them come into the hospice itself,
Yeah.
they're already aware. And for them, a lot of them would say, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm here.
Mhm.
It's what I wanted. A lot of them would ask that they wanted to die in hospice. And it's what I wanted. And now I can relax and allow myself the opportunity to be before I go. And a lot of them felt it like that. They would say they felt safe. It was where they wanted to be. A lot of them wanted to be home, but they knew because we were in and out all the time, they also felt they were safe because they had gotten to know each individual nurse that was looking after them. There might be three of us kind of looking
Yeah.
after the same person, and
Mm.
they would know that. I had one man, and when it came to the end, when he needed his syringe driver, he was in a lot of pain. He was vomiting, and we were putting the medication in just to stop him vomiting, really. And
Yes.
but
Yeah.
when it went up, I put it up, and he said to me, "Oh my God, I've only ever thought of you as my friend coming in. I'd forgotten you were a nurse
Oh,
until you started this. And that's how a lot of them feel about hospice
yes.
nurses.
Yeah.
Saying that, and I quickly say it because
Mm,
I am aware that different people have different experiences here.
yeah.
It isn't always that same way for everybody. That depending on where you are in the country, they don't have the same support as we used to give in St. Francis to
Right.
our patients in the city. There
Yeah.
was lots of us, there was a lot, it was a whole in the country, there might not be the same amount of nurses for patients and that. And I'm very aware of that. And I have heard some stories, and you'd be like, that's not right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I just want to say that because I know there may well be somebody there going, that's not the experience we got, you know.
Okay, and that's very fair. And so,
Yeah,
can I ask you then, Teresa, given that also that there are people, it's a privilege in a sense. You've said this to me that to be there, to have that opportunity to bring a
mm,
family through that experience, and there very often it's your patient and and the wider family
yeah,
are the kind of the ones who guide you in the
mm,
experience they want. But just from the point of view of those of us who don't have that, there are very common questions that people have at that time.
yeah,
Many of them have to do with timing. It has to do with when can I have this conversation? How much should they know? I'm using that word they, and I actually mean the loved one, or indeed, if that question is about our own care, how much
yeah.
can we expect to get answers to what kind of question. This is a huge area because as
Yes,
I'm
it
actually
is.
asking this question, I have 15 other questions in the back of my head. I'm going, ask her this, ask her this, ask her this. So all of you there, please feel free to
I'll put
put your
up the question.
questions in your chat
Yeah.
box because I'm missing things that you definitely will think of. And
Mm.
please do, because someone here this evening will want to ask, will want to know, or want to hear what you have to say indeed as well. Not just you, Teresa, but also those who are present here this evening. So what I'm really saying to you is like there's the awkward questions and there's
There
the
are.
what's okay to ask and even of the like for example if a loved one is meeting with their consultants or their doctors or whatever, can they have someone go with them? Is that a good idea?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know?
Always,
Yeah.
always. And most hospitals, if you're going for tests and they consider that that you may have cancer, or even if it is, because hospice care isn't for cancer only anymore. It used to be. Now it's for people with end stage heart disease, end stage lung disease. It's for people with MND, with multiple sclerosis, any life limiting illness for both adults and children, because we did look after children as well, which is much harder. But,
Yes.
uh, yes, so they will always say, bring somebody with you. Like I
Mhm.
even have Pierce here with me, and he's not sick and dying, but if he's going to a consultant now, I'll say to him, would you like me to go with you? Because I know he's not going to hear everything.
Yeah. Yes.
And partly because his hearing's not great,
Mhm.
but partly because when they're saying something to him, he doesn't, I think sometimes his mind, all our minds go into a different place. So I will always say to people, bring someone with you, especially if it's something, and even if it is that you're going for tests, everybody's going for tests is worried that they're going
Yes.
to have cancer.
Mhm.
So if you're going for your tests and then you have to come back to see the consultant, I would always say bring somebody with you.
Yeah.
You might be very lucky and be told, absolutely not. You don't have cancer. That happened to us last year. And Pierce had problems with his lung. And the first thing the consultant said was, I know everybody thinks of this, so I'm just going to get it out there straight. You do not have cancer.
Wonderful.
And now I will tell you what you do have, which was lovely.
Mhm.
But, so if you're having all these tests done, bring somebody. However, some people don't want to bring anybody. They want to hear it themselves. They want to process it themselves. They want to be there, able to tell their families what they've been told their way. And there's a bit of control in that. But still, it's possibly that's the personality of who they've been all their lives. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Mm, mm, mm.
not everybody tells. And there we go back to the questions, because you see, when we meet people, we have a list of questions we ask them. And one of the questions is there any question that you would like to ask that I haven't brought up here? Because we don't mention death and dying as such. We just go through all their symptoms initially. And we usually ask them what they've been through. And I was telling you the other day that you'd get quite a few people would say, I have one big question I want to ask, but I do not want the answer to.
Yes.
And you'd know that was they wanted to know how long. And
Yes.
my answer and all of our answers as palliative nurses, with the girls I worked with, the staff I worked with, we would always say, are you sure about that? And they'd say yes. And I'd say, well, just to let you know that at any point, if you want that question answered, you can ask me and I will be honest with you if you want an honest answer. I won't hide any answers from you. You just ask whenever you're ready. And then I would always say, but you don't have to ask either.
Yeah.
'Cause some people know.
Hmm.
No, towards the end they know. And they don't just sometimes some people just don't want to hear it.
Yes.
And also I was telling you that you'd go in and the family would say, Mum, I'm going to say Mum. Mum's gone down. She's not as strong as she was. I know she's dying, but don't tell her. Don't tell her, and don't tell her we know. And then you'd go into the sitting room, into the mammy, and she'd be saying, "How am I? How do you think?" And we would always say, um, "What do you think? How do you feel yourself?" And most people say, I'm not as strong as I was. My appetite's not as good, and blah, 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 blah. And I would say, do you know, I've noticed that about you.
Mm.
And then they would say, I think I could be dying. And I would always say, why do you say that? I'd never out straight. Why do you say that? And then they would come back with all their symptoms and how they're feeling and the lack of energy. And when they'd say all that, and they'd say, am I right? And I would say, well, do you know, when you say it like that, I would say that definitely you're much weaker and you may be starting to die. If that's, so we would always check it out. Is that what they wanted to know? And
Yes.
then Mammy would say, now don't tell the children. Now, the children could be anything from 20 to 60. And they're outside, haven't told you that they don't want you to tell Mammy that they know. So what I used to say was, would you know, I'm going to say, I think your children may know that you're
Yes.
not as strong.
Mhm.
And she'd say, oh, really? And do you think? And I'd say, I do. Do you know, they were kind of saying it to me. And
Yeah.
they go, I didn't know they knew. Oh, well, what'll I do? And I'd say, well, do you want me to get them in? And I'll say it to them in front of you. Would
Yeah.
you? And you
Yeah.
do that. And then you could just feel this. Oh,
Yeah.
from everybody because now the elephant is gone from the room.
Yeah. Can I jump in there and just ask you a question then? Not everybody is going to have someone like you to kind of liaise and facilitate that.
Yeah.
What's the right question to ask somebody or to what I know everybody's different, so I might as well say, in Ireland, what are the sort of 7 million questions that people will expect to ask or hear? But what would be in an ideal world the most enlightened approach to that situation? Mm,
Yes. So here's a lot of people will say, I'm dying. They'll
yeah,
say to families, I'm dying. And the families will say, no, ma'am, now you're not dying. Don't be silly. You're
yeah,
not now. Sorry, I'm moving. I've seen you much better in the last week. Um, they would say to us. So what I would say is when somebody says to you, who you know isn't well, who you
yeah,
know is getting weaker, and they say, I'm dying, you do what we do. You say, why would you say that? Why do you think that? And then they will tell you. And if they don't tell you, if they say, I just feel it, you'd say, "Well, Why do you feel it? What is it that you is making you think that?
Mhm.
And if they say, well, I'm weaker and I'm whatever, blah, blah, you don't have to say yes as a family member if you don't, because look, I've been through that myself, and your heart is broken and you just don't want to say,
Mhm.
you're right, you know. So what you say is, I've noticed that myself.
Yes. Okay.
I've noticed that myself. And whatever it is, I'm not walking as well. Do you know, mum or dad or my husband, whatever it is, I've noticed that myself about you.
Okay. Very good. So it's honoring.
Yeah,
It's hearing what's being said and not avoiding it. And
yeah.
I know that. I mean, we were all very human. And when somebody says they're not well, we start finding all the things that they have that might give them hope
Mm,
or may lead them to a
yeah,
more
yeah,
positive frame of mind. But
yeah.
really, what you're actually saying is when someone wants to have an honest conversation about this, keep that conversation open,
Mm,
allow them speak. Because so many of us have, let's just face it, there's so many taboos about death and dying. We feel that if we bring it up, we're kind of what we're almost inviting it,
making it happen.
making it
Yeah.
happen. And then there are so many other things as well where everybody has some their own experience of it, so they're bringing that
Mm,
story to whatever this is,
yeah,
whether they've experienced, I
yeah.
had a friend years ago who grew up in a small country town where the most exciting thing that happened in that town was a funeral. And as small children, they would creep into the funeral parlor and have a look at the person who had passed, and then make sure they were going to the party after the church. And they loved it, and so they grew up with conversations around,
Mm,
what they were hearing and what they were seeing
mm,
and that kind of thing. Other people will have never experienced that. But there's a few things I want to ask you about this stage, and also anybody else who wants to come into this question as well. But some of them have to do with what really matters in those last. First of all, how do you ask? Okay, so is it okay to ask how long your loved one has of the
yeah,
the health professionals in there?
absolutely. It is.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's very hard to tell. So
yeah,
we used to have guidelines, and we'd say to people, now it'd be different if somebody you knew and they've got a day or two. But if
mhm,
it's like a few weeks out,
yes,
we used to have guidelines, and how we would say it would be when I see somebody today and I see them in 2 weeks' time and I see very little change, I'm going to say it's months.
okay,
If I see somebody today and next week I meet them and I've seen a change, I'm going to say weeks.
mhm,
And then if somebody is actually in the bed and they haven't been able to eat and they're very weak, I would then say you've got a few days. I
okay.
would always add in, but I've been made to be a liar. And sometimes I used to do that. It was my way of being soft with telling
Yes.
them, but not added to which it was somebody I knew myself, as in a patient I've been with for a long time. It was hard for me too sometimes to say it. So I would always throw in, I've been made to be a liar. So she could be here in 4 weeks' time when I've told you 2 days. Or
Yes.
she could, if I'm saying a couple of weeks, I would always say, somebody always can get something suddenly and die
Yes.
quicker.
Yes. Yes. Of course.
But you're given guidelines, because the truth of it is, no one knows.
Yeah.
There's only one person. If you believe in God or a higher being or whatever, there's only one person who knows, if there
Yeah.
is even. So we can't always be very sure. You can be within 40 to 48 hours.
Right.
You can definitely be, there's definite
There's
changes. There's changes in the
reassurance.
face, and there's changes that you can say you've got 48 hours or whatever, or
Okay.
maybe a week. But other than that, because I have been known to go to see people and they would say to me, because we'd have people on the palliative care list for, and sometimes a couple of years, and they'd say, "Do you know, the consultant told me 5 years ago that I'd a year." And I just think I love going into him, and I love telling him that here I am 4 years later. So, you know,
Yes, of
but
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do
So
you
I
find then, sorry to come in, do you
run.
find then that when people are kind of when they know A, what ails them, and B, what to expect, do they change their attitude to living? Do they change their way of living? And does life become more, what would we say, important, the present, who they're with? What kind of things do people appreciate at that point?
I suppose they appreciate just the small things, not the
Yeah.
big things. They appreciate that their family is around them, that their their loved one is there with them. They appreciate all the small things.
Yes. Yeah.
Really.
Mhm.
Some of them don't change. Some of them try to make the most of everything.
Yeah.
Others Others do get it overwhelms them and they are upset and they can get depressed because let's face it, who wants to die?
Yes.
Especially very young people, but not always young. I would have looked after quite a few who'd be in their 80s,
Mhm.
husbands and wives, and they'd be brokenhearted because they were leaving behind the person they had been with for 60 years.
Now that's interesting. And is it their leaving that is breaking their heart, or the fact that they're leaving so is it their departing, or is it that they're leaving that person behind to deal with life on their own? Which of those is probably is the bigger
Um,
issue?
the fact that they're leaving.
The fact
They're
that
leaving, like they'll say, I'm leaving the one person that I have been with all my life. Some of it is that they're leaving them behind, but they most of them would say, I know they'll be okay, but I'm
yes,
leaving. I'm leaving.
yes,
And the
yeah,
person that's being left will say, my right arm is going.
uh-huh. Okay,
It should be,
yeah,
you
mm,
kind of think, you don't think, nobody thinks, but you'd imagine that when somebody older is dying, you're saying, well, they had a great life and blah, blah, blah. No, because they've had that great life with that person all that life. And
yeah,
they're now going.
yes,
That one person they trusted, loved, all that. And that is being broken,
mm.
So that's as hard as somebody much younger going and leaving behind their young children. And,
Oh
you
yes.
know, yeah,
And that would
yeah.
take a whole other kind of well, actually, on that question, I was going to say a whole other kind of uh, facilitating on that. Elaine was asking, what would you think about the whole concept of death doulas in Ireland?
So I suppose death. I don't know I'm going to say I don't know too much. I know there are death doulas. I suppose around, and I did say it earlier. Not everywhere in the country has fabulous. They have palliative care
Yes.
teams, but they
Mm,
don't have the same support because they don't.
yeah.
They might stop their work earlier in the day, and they wouldn't be there in the evening. So death doulas are fabulous. The only thing about death doulas is that they can't give, that I'm aware of, they
Yeah.
can't give medication if it's required.
Oh
So it does
yes.
need a nurse or a nurse,
Yes. Yes.
unless they're actually nurses and they are still registered. So if they're still a registered nurse and they're a
Mm.
death doula, they can get permission to give medication if it's required. No
Okay.
more than we used to teach family members to give
Oh
um
yes, I see.
to give medication for during the night if somebody's in
Yes.
pain or if somebody's vomiting or um
Yes.
but death doulas generally aren't allowed to do that. Saying that, they are there and they do support family. They do, support the dying person. They support the family because they're there. They're
Mm,
able to help them during
mm,
that time, and they are
mm.
fabulous. They would be fabulous.
And
Yeah.
and it's not unlike, I mean, I'm only thinking of my own grandmother. My cousin's here this evening. I think my sister's there as well.
Mm.
Our own grandmother was a wise woman. And she would, when someone in the rural community where she lived was either passing or had passed, she would make her way through the roads with her rosary in one hand and her torch in the other to the house because her experience was what the family may have needed. And there's always been that thing, I think, in Ireland where, the gentle kind of uh, contribution of a neighborhood of the people who have, get called
Mm,
in and called upon at a time like that, is valuable and so invaluable.
mm,
They know how to cook meal. They say, I can remember so quietly, people would move around, they bring meals in and sandwiches in,
mm,
put the kettle on, and just allow the family go through whatever was necessary at that time. It's such a
yeah.
lovely tradition in Ireland. If anybody has any experiences that they want to share, or any stories they want, or questions, that would be great. And please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
But can I also, sorry, Trina, for
yeah,
interrupting you. I can always say also say because it was something that you had put up in the email today and we had discussed last week.
yeah,
Death isn't always about the sadness, and Irish people generally have a great sense of humor,
yeah,
and funny things can happen during all this time, and we don't have to be sad. I know, and I'm saying this because I know I was sad when both my mum and dad were dying.
yeah.
But in between, we had some laughs because there would always be something that would happen that would make us laugh. You know what I mean? And I know when I'd be in and out of houses, there was one particular man and he used to say to me, I love when you call. And I'd say, really? And he'd say, yeah, because when I'm leaving you to the door, I'm laughing.
Lovely.
And people, and they love telling their stories and and all those kind of things. I'm just thinking about one that just with my own dad. We he towards the last few weeks he really didn't want to eat. He wasn't this, and he was had a great appetite normally, but and my sister, who normally wouldn't have, she'd been in the house, but she wouldn't have done, I don't mean she wasn't, but she wouldn't have cooked or anything for him. But he wouldn't eat anything for Mammy. And she said, oh, Daddy, I'll make you a lovely poached egg. And he said, yeah. So in our kitchen, there was rails up for putting the clothes on to dry, And Daddy was sitting over that side of the table and she microwaved his poached egg. And I don't know if anybody's ever eaten a microwave poached egg, but I mean, she had the toast for him and the microwave poached egg, and he put the knife into the poached egg and it exploded. Now, I was down the hall and I heard this explosion, and I came flying up, going, oh, what happened? And the egg was all over him, all over the clothes, all over everything. And he just went, and then he started to laugh and laugh, and Siobhan was killing herself. And so was Mommy. We were all howling laughing in the
Yeah.
middle of this very weak man who couldn't eat and all the
Yes.
rest. And then what did he say? So much for making me egg. I can't even eat it because it's exploded now. You know, and with things like that, because
Yeah.
that's who we are, or telling the stories, or,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not always sad. I mean, I would have gone into homes and the family be in, and they'd be chatting away and laughing. And even when the person was on their deathbed as such, the family be sitting around, they'd have the music on, the favorite music, they'd be telling stories. Do you remember the time when, and it'd be about whoever it is dying and the family and what they were through, and maybe a funny story, and I used to love going into the homes
Mhm.
when they'd be doing that. And that death doulas do that too. They're sitting there, they allow the stories, they enjoy them, they encourage it,
Yeah.
and
And even
so,
singing. I
mm,
and a few people, one or two got in touch with me today to say that that almost in instinct, intuitively, they sang a song to their loved one. And that would, and did you ever have that experience of people coming in and sing? Yeah.
I remember, and I've lost it. There was this family I went into, and they were gorgeous, and I'd looked after the dad, and then we got a referral, and I arrived at the door, and the girl who had left me to the door when I was leaving after the father died opened the door to me for the mother. But anyway, her daughter sang in London, on stage in London, and we were sitting, and the granny said to her, will you sing that beautiful song I like? And I was sitting at the edge of the bed, and they videoed her singing the song, but
Yeah.
also videoed me sitting with them. And it was just a beautiful moment. And I won't be just say that I did shed tears, but
Aye.
unfortunately, I lost my phone
And you lost
4 years
somebody.
ago, and that video was on that. But
Yeah.
yes, that's happened where you'd get them singing their one or other of the children or the grandchildren, like in that case where she was singing this beautiful. I can't even remember the name of the song now. It was out at
Yeah.
the time,
Yeah.
and you just couldn't but shed a few tears.
Something
And
about
yeah,
music, isn't it?
yeah,
I would
yeah.
kind of then on that subject, as so many people would have very different experiences when somebody is passing. But I've heard stories of people who their loved one would have been very really not communicating at all for maybe a couple of days. And then out of nowhere, lovely lucid conversations begin and questions asked and contributions. And
Mm,
this would be an hour maybe before that
yeah.
person passes. What is, what are the kinds of things that people can expect in those kind of last hours?
A lot of the time, not everybody is actually unconscious before they die. Some
Yeah.
people aren't, so they would be saying little few words and that.
Mm.
Most people aren't. Most people are unconscious. But to be always aware that they can hear
Yes.
everything that's going on.
Hmm.
And I used to know I'd go in as a nurse to look after somebody. But if a family member came in, you'd see the eyebrows go up, or you'd see, even if though their eyes were closed, you'd see something different that I knew, that they knew a family member had come in, and it wasn't just the nurse that was there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um,
So
but
they,
I
mm,
suppose mostly but some people, and they do, and you hear people saying that, and others saying it didn't happen at all.
mm,
But you will see people waking up and looking and smiling
yes.
and then dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe, I don't know what others
Mm,
believe, but I firmly believe that they have seen somebody or something that made them happy or that gave them before they died. You know, a
mm,
lot of people during that time would say to you, I saw lovely children, or I saw my husband, or I saw my mother.
yeah.
And I know a lot of people would say, but that's the medication they're on. And it might be the medication they're on, but it might not. And
Mm.
I personally, I like to believe that it's not.
Oh, yeah.
That's just me, you
Yeah.
know. But other
I'm with
people
you
would
on
say,
that.
oh, it's medication. They're
Yeah.
hallucinating and but I would always say to them, are they upsetting you? If they were saying,
Okay.
I'd say, is that upsetting you? And they
Yeah.
go, no, 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 no. I love looking at the little children at the end of the bed, dancing and playing, or no, no. When mommy comes, I'm really happy. So for
Mhm.
me, if it's not distressing them,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done too much about it,
Okay.
as long as they were happy, because they wouldn't have it all the time, but just,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. June has asked a question and she said, on the issue of food, if a person
yeah, I
doesn't
was just
want to
saying.
eat, when can you let them stop? Or is there much intervention, tube feeding, etc.? Do you get that?
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's a huge issue with some people.
Mm,
No, they look, people stop eating, or their appetite goes down. It doesn't go down because they don't want to eat. It goes down because their body has become so weak. It's not able to tolerate the food. It's not able to break it down. They don't have the energy to eat and for the whole body to process it.
yeah.
So the appetite reduces,
Mm,
so does the drinking. So we can encourage them to take little bits, but really, if they really don't want to, see, people then think, well, I'm starving them,
yeah.
or they're dehydrated and I'm not giving them water and they're going to, starve and die of thirst. But that's not the way it is.
Mm,
They're not eating because they can't eat,
yeah.
because the body isn't able to process it. They're not drinking because the body also isn't able to process it. The kidneys aren't working as well as they used to be. The bladder isn't working. So it's not being processed. So the least amount of fluid that they can take is okay. Added
Yeah.
to which, if they take too much fluids or you give them too many fluids, because a lot of people would say, will you not give them a drip? And to do that, you actually overload the body with
Right.
fluid that it can't get rid of. And so therefore they become more uncomfortable because their
Yes.
lungs and their heart builds up with fluid because they can't get rid of it. And
Yeah.
that makes them more uncomfortable. And even though I looking on and anybody else looking on is saying, but they're starving and, they're thirsty and they actually aren't. They're
Hmm.
actually, if they are, they will ask.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
they're thirsty, they'll say, can I have a drop of water?
Hmm. Hmm.
If they're hungry, they would say, but a lot of people say, do you know what? Now I wouldn't mind. I'd love an old Chinese. This used to happen. I'd love an old Chinese now. Would you order it in? And the family'd say, and she asked last night, we got the Chinese, and we all got the Chinese. And then he took two spoonfuls and said, thanks, that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Just wanted
thanks,
the
that's because
taste.
all they wanted was the taste.
Yes. Yes.
They
Very
didn't
good.
want the full
Uh-huh.
Chinese.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yes, no. And I just before I came on and I follow this girl on Instagram. So if just for yourselves, and I'll send it to you. She's called The Death. God, I'll have to look it up. I'll send it to you. You can email it to people. She's on Instagram. Any questions about, feeding and anything like that. She explains it so well. She's a hospice nurse. She
Okay.
teaches palliative care. She also teaches death doula. She's American, but she's
Mm,
very down to earth. She's not OTT, you
yeah.
know. Um, and what she explains will be how I would have explained to people and their families.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. So, I took a photograph of it. But
If
anyway,
you
look at
think of it, that'd be great.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
on that subject, look, listen, we all have this in mind. My sister came back from America before Christmas, and Theresa, she brought me back this book. If any of you can read it, sorry, it's your problem now because I'm dead. End of life planner. I couldn't believe it when I started opening it, and the kinds of things that are in there, where to find important documents, what there are, your lawyer, or where your wishes are can be found, and there's even a page for my end of life wishes and that kind of thing. Um, then also what kind of care you want, letters that you'd like to leave to people, messages you want people to discover afterwards.
Mm.
Listen, I know there's actually a very nice woman in Ireland who's created a beautiful, she's a lawyer, and she's created a beautiful
Yes,
bound journal. I don't know if some of you have
yeah,
seen this. I think it's
I've
just
seen it.
called The Journal by a lawyer. I don't know her name. It's called The Journal, and it's by a lawyer, an Irish woman who's a lawyer, and it looks rather
Mm,
lovely. But come here. So these ideas are great, but rather than have your family find them after you've gone, wouldn't it be so much better to say to your family, listen, I know how you feel about cremation, but I want it. That's my wishes.
yeah.
Or I know how you feel about a church funeral, but I actually want this. These are things people don't even bring up because they're with their closest family members, because they don't want to upset them, and they don't want. Yet, nothing makes people happier when a funeral is either
Oh,
going ahead or over than to feel that they've given their loved one uh, a, a good send off,
yeah.
basically.
And this is why being honest and being open when 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 somebody who whether they have cancer or the other things that you start talking about that because then you can talk and a lot of people toward during their palliative thing they social workers like Karen that you all know Karen Walsh
Yes, Karen Mulch.
they would talk about people's wishes and help them talk about it with their families, about what they'd like for their funeral and the music they have and all that. And it just makes life so much easier because you're not going, what what hymns would she want? Does she
Yeah.
really want that or didn't she? But I was saying to you before we came on, I remember a couple of years ago, since I was about 19, I decided I was being cremated for a reason that I'm not going into, but and I informed my mother at the time, I'm being cremated. And she was like, well, whatever. She was obviously thinking, well, I'll be gone, I'm sure. But
Mm.
anyway, so a few years ago, when I was at a family gathering during the summer with with my all of my family, my brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews, and I was saying to you, I think maybe somebody had died a few months beforehand, and we were talking. And I said, oh, by the way, just letting you know, because I'd be just out there because I'm used to it. I just to let you know that, just to remind you all, I want to be cremated when I die. And of course, we're all panicked initially. What? What's wrong with you? And I said, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just saying, just in case something happens, I want to be cremated. And my sister said, you'd want to put that in writing. And I said, why? She said, because she said, not everybody wants or likes cremation. I said, well, I'm telling you, that's what I want. So I said to the two nieces who were cousins, who will be very, if you wish something, you should get it. I said,
Yeah.
see you two, when I die, I'm putting the burden on you to make sure that I get cremated. And if you don't cremate me, I will come back here.
And haunt you.
And I was kind of still, I was laughing about it and joking. And,
Yeah.
but I was saying I'm being serious here now.
Yeah.
But I made it into you know, and the others were all like, well, I don't know, all this kind of, you're being morbid. And I said, no, I'm just putting it out
Well,
there.
look,
That's
on
what I
that,
want.
what's the best way to bring up that subject? I mean, is it a Christmas time or a family funeral or
Well, if it was a funeral, if it's a funeral and somebody gets buried,
yeah,
you could well say afterwards that, you know what, I wouldn't like to be buried.
yeah,
I'd,
yeah, yeah,
I'd like to be cremated. Or if
yeah.
somebody's been cremated, saying, now that wouldn't be for me,
Mhm.
that wouldn't be for me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
you can bring it up at times like that. But for me, I just brought it up in the middle of a summer gathering of the family. I just said,
Lovely
oh,
and
by the
cheerful.
way, just to let you all know. And you see, I suppose because they know me so well, I think the sisters were like, God, she's lost it
That's
now,
Teresa.
this is it. But
Well, now,
I
e-
did, I did write my will a
yeah,
couple of years ago, and I did write a separate thing. I put in my will, but as the sister said, it's a bit late now when the will comes out.
yeah,
But I did write out, and Pierce was laughing at me. The day I was writing out what I wanted in the will, I wrote out also my funeral wishes,
wishes. Brilliant.
down to which church,
Yeah,
what music,
yes.
who was to say what,
Mhm.
um, all those things, cremation, the whole lot, where I was to go,
Mhm.
where I was to be shaked, the whole lot. And Pierce was like, you've lost it. I said, I haven't. There are
No,
certain things that I want for my funeral. And if I suddenly die,
yeah.
I want somebody there to be able to say, this is what she
This is
wanted.
what she wanted. And I love this idea because Yvonne has just come on. She said the Irish Hospice Foundation also have an
They
end of
do
life
have, yeah.
planner called Think Ahead.
Yeah.
That's Think Ahead from the Irish Hospice Foundation. It has everything in it, like the book that I showed up there a few minutes ago. Even saying, mine's filled out years ago. My funeral mass is saved in my computer and it saves the kids from worrying about it. And actually, Yvonne,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. My family member of my own has in fact, the funeral director has all of the details. So she's not even going to worry the family about how this is going
Yeah.
to be put ahead, right
Yeah.
down to the hymns she wants and the readings that she wants and all kinds of other things. Now, how freeing is that? That when the time comes, for those who are still around, will know exactly how to fulfill that person's wishes. It just means you're free to do the other things, to have the conversations, I mean, I'm sure that you have many stories about it, and we're going to finish up now, though, unless anyone has other questions. But I'm sure that you have known people who regret that they did not have conversations or feel that they would have liked closure before the person passed, and then feel
Yeah.
they've lost out on
Yeah.
something.
I never told mom I loved her. I never told
Yeah.
him I never did, all these things,
Mm,
there are a lot of people. I never asked for forgiveness, Oh,
yeah.
there's lots of different things.
Mm,
Some, I'm sorry I didn't live my life like I should have.
yeah.
And before I retired at 62, and there was quite a few people had died. They were dying. I was looking after them and they were in their late 50s. And they'd say to me, and what age are you? You're probably a young one. And I'd say, well, no, I'm not actually. And they'd say all the plans I had for my retirement, and now I can't do them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I have heard that year, you know, why don't you retire when you're well and go and enjoy
Ah,
yourself?
how
And I just thought,
wise.
what a good idea,
Mm, mm.
you know,
Well, you're well.
yeah,
Exactly.
while you're
El
well.
Elaine
And that's
Dowling has.
also, yeah,
Sorry.
that's also the time when you discuss your funeral. Not when we're sick.
Yeah.
Do it when we're well. I
Yeah.
wrote out a list. That's all you have to. I wrote out a list of all the things I want for my funeral, and they're all go, no, don't talk about the funeral. That's morbid. I'm just letting you know. There's nothing wrong with me. But when the time comes, it's sitting in the press forever.
Well, that's the thing. And actually, on that subject, I remember saying to one of my daughters last year, I heard a song, a John Denver song on the radio, and I went, now, when I die, I want that song played at my funeral. And she said, Mom, I'm going to have to scratch out all the other ones you told me you want at your funeral. So I'm afraid I'm going to keep people there for hours on end.
You should
Elaine,
have the funeral and then go to the cremation, and you can have
yeah,
all of them done. Elaine, I
exactly.
agree that that last message, yeah, that you put up there. What was it?
Her
You
other
only
half in the
die
background.
once, so you might as well have the
The
send
send
off that
you.
you want.
That's true, so true. And Trina Hannon
Yeah.
is saying she's asked her husband already what he wanted, and his reply was, "On top of you." Wasn't expecting that, Trina. I'm only hoping you don't go
You
together.
see, you see, he's obviously thinking he's going to be there longer than her. Poor
Exactly,
Trina.
which is fair enough. Thanks, Trina. Thanks for the laugh. Listen, do you
You
know what?
see, you can make it
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Oh,
it
but I
does not.
could.
And I
Oh,
feel that that's an important thing to pass on to the next generation as well. Yes, but I cook her for you. Listen, it's a joy. I actually hope that you or someone like you is around for me and mine when the time comes, Teresa,
no,
because I
thank
can
you.
only imagine the years of real comfort and tenderness and compassion and understanding and laughs that you have brought to the
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
were lucky enough to have come through you at the time that they needed someone like you most.
And I have some beautiful memories,
Yeah.
like I don't look back. I have wonderful memories. And just to say to people, for me, um, I just feel I was so lucky to be honored to be able to look after anybody that I looked after who was dying and their families. It really was an honor for me to be able to do that. I loved it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the nurses that I worked with, who I still see, they
Mm.
were exactly the same. It was part of who we all were, but definitely it was an honor to be able to look at. And even as I'm saying it, there's some things I'm thinking fun things that had happened, and with the families and with the person, and yeah, it was just a beautiful end to my career that I did
Yeah.
worked in that end for
Yeah.
those last 20 years. Yeah.
And what you're saying is it doesn't all have to be, even at the very end, it doesn't all have to be
No,
tragedy and
no,
and pain and sadness. It
no.
can be lighthearted and loving and
Mm.
amusing and all the rest
And
of
I
it.
know it is for some, and if
Mm.
it's somebody's been, we're talking here really about people who are going to die.
I know. Yes.
There's when there's
Yes.
tragic deaths, that's
There are.
completely, completely different. The people around them can make it that tiny bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in tragedy and even in that pain, depending on who's looking after you,
Mhm.
it can be exacerbated or made that little bit easier by the support and care that you get.
Okay. And
Oh,
that's really
Liz is there.
important.
Hi.
Who's there? Who's there?
Liz Stafford. Liz
Yes, you
Stafford.
know, it's very good. So long as and that's good advice to anyone, even at the that desperate time, should that happen, is to make sure you have people around you who can support
Yeah.
you Don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help. That if that's what you need, and very
Yeah.
often it is, never be afraid to take the whole, do not take the whole burden on yourself. Ask for help and have a trusted advisor around you. Just want to go
Yeah.
through some of the questions.
And just quickly there, Liz just popped up there, and I worked with Liz in the hospice, and a
Ah,
more beautiful nurse and care you'll never get. She was just, if I
Doris.
was sick and dying, I'd want Liz looking after me. And I mean that. I mean that. And she knows I mean that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Isn't it lovely? That is just lovely to hear you saying that. And there,
Mm,
and I know, and I can see others here as well. And my own sister, of course, Anne, has been a carer of people in those, very last, the last, even in some cases in the last few years of their life, where they have not been able to do anything for themselves. And Anne has gone out through the hills and the lashings of rain and the storms and everything else to make sure that she's been there to give people that the kind of care they needed. And there's so many of you there who do that kind of work. Oh my goodness. I mean, these are the real angels in this world. And we are so grateful to you, all of you
mm,
who do. But compassion, understanding, non-judgment, uh, humor,
mm,
and just in a sense where, as Elaine Dowling said last week when she was talking, and Geraldine as well, that fear is the absence of love. And once you bring love into something,
mm,
you are opening up to something so much richer and more valuable and supportive and all of those
mm.
other things.
And
Listen,
I
yeah,
just saw a
please do.
notice there about the night nurses,
Yeah.
the Cancer Society night nurses, fabulous women or
Mm,
fabulous nurses.
mm,
Without them, because palliative nurses have to stop at some point during the day. They look after people all through the night and support them, and they tend to be there when somebody actually dies. We don't always, the palliative nurse isn't always there, but they tend to be there,
mm,
and they are absolutely wonderful, wonderful nurses. And that's for sure. Yeah, yeah.
mm. So grateful for everybody in that. Everybody has anything to do. And for all of you here. Theresa, thank you so much for everything you've brought to us this evening. I have no doubt if you ever, and in fact, one area that I think we can come back to at another time if we're ready for it is, and I know that Karen Walsh will contribute in this area as well, is that really fascinating, magical part of life after your loved one is gone, and when we
Mhm.
feel them close to us, and without a shadow of a doubt we know that we've received some kind of
Oh, definitely.
contact or communication, or just the sort of idea of finding the robin or the feather or all of these other beautiful things. But we all have some amazing stories of this, and they need to be told. And I think we're going to do another night on that, if I could have a show of hands, or certainly come back to me and let me know what you think. But I feel it's very much something that we in the sort of Wise and Ageless Goddess community, the Tuesday Night Club, would have a lot of benefit and opportunity. And I would really love if the members would share their stories of that kind of thing, that kind of comfort and contact, and a sense of presence of our loved ones who have passed on, and the stories that go with that. Okay, I definitely would love that. That's great. I would love that
Yeah.
too. Okay, I listen. I do want to
Thank
do.
you all very much for listening.
I'm going to do one thing before we go, because why not? We haven't done it in a while. This is three angel cards. I'm using the Angelic Activations, which is a Kyle Gray book. This is our Kyle Gray deck. Angelic Activations. We're just going to pick out three. So if you want to choose one, two, three before we finish, we'll do this for each other this evening. Who knows what kind of message we'll find in there. Um, thank you. Now, our first one is, this is a beautiful card. I don't know if you can see it. And it's hope. It's move with grace. This is a time to learn and adapt. You are being invited to slow down, take your time, and take in the current moment. Stop putting too much pressure and expectation upon yourself, as it's taking you away from your natural attention to detail and the expression of your creativity. There's no need to rush or force your way ahead. Good things happen when you move with tenderness and care. And the activation is, I trust in the ease and flow of life. That's hope for anyone who picked number one. And number two. Thank you. Okay, we've got Earth Mother for number 2. This is the card here. You know how to evolve. There is something you know needs your time and attention, something you know needs your action, something you know is going to help you grow and evolve. And today you are being invited to take the steps you know you need to take to move out of stuck state and into a state of growth. This isn't a lifetime to fall into old patterns. It's a lifetime to create new ones. The activation for that is I take the soul-led steps I need to take in order to heal and grow. And that's Earth Mother. And it's interesting to remember before we go to our third card that tonight there is a full moon. It's the full blood moon. And it's from all I'm hearing about it, it's a beautiful new sense of beginning um, and taking steps to nourish what it is that you feel that you need in your life right now. This one is light beings. Look at that. Look at the light in that. It's a beautiful card. Energetic shifts. This is number 3. This is a time of healing and change. Old energies are being released from your world. This isn't a call to discard traditions, but to reflect on what you have learned and how you can grow. You're being called upon to be aware of a new information that is being revealed to you, for it is pivotal for the next phase of your journey. Activation. I create space for learning anew. Okay, those are our 3 cards for this evening. And thanks to everybody for being here this evening. I'll be in touch about new, thank you, Morlan. I'll be in touch about a new Tuesday night club. I've been nursing in the background for the past, actually, I'm going to say a couple of years, and hoping that we can get that together in the next couple of weeks. But I'll be in touch and I'll let you know, and I'll give you plenty of time to arrange to be with us on that evening. So take good care of yourselves. Love this beautiful new March, a lovely sunlight coming in, dawn, the birds are singing and the light is getting stronger, and it's great to see you all. Thank you so much for being here, and Theresa especially, thank you so much for all you've done for us this evening.
And
Okay,
thank you
take
too,
care,
Trina,
everybody.
because without you, this wouldn't be happening at all.
Ah, look, listen, without you, it wouldn't be happening. We'd all, without any of us, this wouldn't be happening. Listen, thank you, all of you, so much.
Okay, bye
Teresa,
bye.
lots of love. Take good care of yourself. Bye bye now. Bye bye.